Namondo, 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 Namondo. Let's join our hands together in Gasho. Reverently contemplating Amida's directing of virtue for our going forth, I find there is great shinjin. Great shinjin is the superlative means for attaining longevity and deathlessness. It is the wondrous way to awaken aspiration for the pure and rejection of the defiled. It is the straightforward mind directed to us through the selected vow. It is Shinjin that actualizes Amida's profound and vast benefiting of others. The words of Shinran Shonin, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Good morning, welcome, and thank you all for your presence today to attend this Sunday morning service. First of all, I wish to apologize for my long absence from the temple. As most of you already know, I was hospitalized at Strobe for 2 weeks due to difficulty of breathing. I had fluid in my lungs, which the doctors drained by pumping me with medications and oxygen. I am now fully recovered from that, but unfortunately, I am also now needing dialysis treatment 3 times a week for the rest of my life because my kidneys have already failed to function properly. I truly would like to thank those of you who took time to visit me in the hospital and also the other well-wishers as well. To be admitted to the hospital for a serious illness is not a very pleasant experience. I had to endure a lot of pain, being poked by needles for blood samples every so often, and the feeling of like being suffocated because I had trouble breathing when I was admitted to the emergency room. Not to mention being in a place totally different from the comfort of home. I felt isolated and scared. But being a nurse before, the hospital setting gradually became once again a familiar place for me, and I gradually felt better and able to breathe easier. With 24 hours of care and monitoring, my stay in the hospital became more pleasant and tolerable. I was able to rest and have meals served 3 times a day, although the hospital food was mostly bland because of my dietary restrictions. It was like I was on an unwanted vacation in the hospital. Let me emphasize that, unwanted. I didn't want to be in that place. Still, I'd rather be healthy, and instead of lying in a comfortable bed, I'd prefer the comfort of sitting in a seat of an airplane bound for a vacation spot where I can relax. I enjoy traveling by air very much. Air travel, as we know, is considered as the safest form of transportation. The modern passenger jet is loaded with computers and other safety features that one's chances of getting in an automobile or train accident is greater than getting injured or killed in an airline disaster. What makes flying in an airplane scary at first is the thought that you are riding in a metal object with wings that is much heavier than air and not supposed to fly according to the laws of gravity. But yet, airplanes get off the ground seemingly without problems and take people to distant places in much shorter periods of time than automobiles or ships. The shorter travel time and the feeling of being above the earth makes flying a pleasant rather than a frightening experience for most people. Still, the uncertainty of falling out of the sky is there, but people seem to be willing to take a chance at air travel. Aside from the already mentioned convenience of short-haul time travel, airline flights are made as comfortable as possible for passengers, or it used to be anyway. Food is served with drinks, movies, and pressurized cabins, well-regulated temperatures, and so on. But the most important reason that makes people take the risk of flying in airplanes is the knowledge that the trip has a destination, a place to eventually land and discharge passengers and refuel for the next flight. That's what gives passengers and crew alike the confidence, knowing that the flight will eventually end and everybody will be at the place they have chosen to go to. In other words, there is a purpose in all of that traveling that's worth the very small risk involved. Now imagine for a moment boarding an airplane that is truly built for comfort. This airline serves the most delicious food and drinks, plays the best in-flight movies, and has the most attractive flight attendants serving the passengers' needs in a most efficient and prompt manner. It seems like it's the ideal plane to ride on a journey, except for one small drawback. This plane has no set destination. It cannot land again once it leaves the ground, and it has a limited amount of fuel. No matter how tasty the meals are, no matter how interesting the entertainment and all, not one passenger will enjoy the flight or even bother to board a plane because it is a flight that is doomed to crash the moment the fuel is exhausted. It has no destination, no purpose, no place to go. Would anybody be willing to board that plane? Most likely, no one. Our lives in general, including our spiritual journey in life, can be compared to that kind of traveling by air. Why do we take the time to spend an hour of each Sunday to come to the temple and listen to the words of the Buddha? What is the goal, the purpose, the destination we are aiming for in coming to the Sunday services? We have to have a purpose in our spiritual life in order for Buddhism to have any meaning in all of us. Without a spiritual purpose, we would not have any direction, no guide to mitigate the sufferings inherent in our imperfect world of samsara. As Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, ideally, our spiritual lives should not be distant from our temporal life, meaning that as we spiritually develop through listening to the teachings, our daily lives should also become centered on the teachings, on how to apply it for the benefit of ourselves and others. However, the ultimate goal is still birthed in the Pure Land through receiving the mind of Amida Buddha. The development of the entrusting heart called shinjin. We unenlightened beings often view money, fame, and position as our goals in life, and we put a lot of energy into pursuing such goals. While the achievement of such goals is necessary in order to live a comfortable life, nevertheless, these goals are tied in to the material world, which we ultimately will have to abandon at the moment of death. We can never bring any of these accomplishments with us when we die. Yes, the purpose or destination of this great airplane of our spiritual life is birth in the Pure Land. And the decisive cause of that birth is shinjin, the true and entrusting mind that is free of doubt and delusion. Without shinjin, according to Shinran, Birth in the Pure Land is not possible. Without birth in the Pure Land, what happens to us after death? In the old days, this was a question of religious importance, and people worried about the question of the afterlife. If they died without attaining shinjin, they will not be able to transcend the world of suffering and will be born in hell or lower realms of existence. So they thought. This state of anxiety concerning the next life has been described as the darkness of mind, and it is indeed generated a lot of fear in the old days. Unfortunately, even today, this fear has been exploited by some unscrupulous self-proclaimed gurus or religious founders of cults to control people's minds into submission, which claims that only they can offer the answer. It is either hell or shinjin or hell. The purpose of life, they claim, is to attain shinjin. Otherwise, human life would be filled with anxiety about going to hell after death. Just as the anxious passengers of the plane we mentioned, the plane without destination, they are filled with anxiety and fear of their impending doom. Then, should we, as followers of Jodo Shinshu Buddhist teachings, be obsessed with attaining shinjin? I'd say absolutely not. Although Shinran did say that shinjin is the decisive cause of birth in the Pure Land, shinjin is something that we receive from Amida Buddha, and no cult leader or Jodo Shinshu religious leader, for that matter, can promise to deliver it to anyone if the believer follows whatever that leader tells him or her to do. Shinjin cannot be obtained by the calculating mind, or hakarai, they call it, the calculating human mind, that if one does this or that, then he will receive shinjin faster than usual. No, shinjin is actually there already, residing in our hearts and minds. The difficult thing about it is to awaken to it. It's just like a light bulb, which we turn on the switch, but it's not as simple as that. To awaken means to entrust in the Buddha's compassion that no matter how difficult may be the situation is in our lives, we are constantly bathed by the boundless light of Amida's compassion. It is difficult to entrust because our bonno, or blind passions that cloud our thinking, are strong and not easy to overcome. But that is precisely the intent of the 18th or primal vow of Amida Buddha, to dispel the darkness of ignorance, Mumyo no Yami, they call it in Japanese, and to transform our blind passions into virtues. What does the primal vow say? The vow says to focus our minds on Amida Buddha and the Pure Land, not on hell or any other realms, any other lower realms. To worry about falling into the evil realms because of the perceived lack of shinjin is doing precisely the opposite. We're focusing our minds on that one place that the seeker of enlightenment is trying to avoid. To worry needlessly about where one goes after death implies spiritual immaturity, lack of faith, or entrusting in the Buddha's promise of salvation. Lastly, to preoccupy ourselves about the afterlife means to cease living in the present moment, unable to stop and enjoy what living in the present has to offer. Rather than trying to grab shinjin, if we do it like this, we try to grab it, we only get this much. But rather than grabbing shinjin, let shinjin grab us. So in our entirety, let the natural workings of Amida's vow grab us in totality, wholeheartedly. The Buddha's teachings is meant for us to live happy, contented lives by realizing the true nature of things. The teachings are not meant to condemn us to a life of neurotic worrying about what happens after death. The true follower of the Buddha's path is one who lives his or her life in harmony with all people, letting go of the desires of the ego and striving not just for one's enlightenment and salvation through trust in the Buddha's wisdom and compassion, but for the enlightenment and liberation of all beings. The real purpose of our spiritual journey is to awaken and receive the entrusting mind that the Buddha has compassionately offered to us. And with the Pure Land as our ultimate goal in mind, our travel on the Buddhist path will be free from worries and anxieties and be filled with hope and joyful anticipation. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you.